No fare, no ride. The driver snapped at the shivering old woman as the bus doors began to close. On the curb, a 12-year-old black maid's daughter felt her last $5 burning in her pocket. Rent money, milk money, survival money. She jammed her sneaker in the door and paid anyway, never guessing the stranger she rescued was a billionaire about to drag a girl from the East End into a world that had always pretended she didn't exist. The autumn wind in Fairview carried two entirely different scents depending on which side of town you stood on. Up on Briar Hill, where the mansions glowed like lanterns behind their wrought iron gates, the breeze smelled of cedar fireplaces, glossy leather interiors, and the soft perfume of money. But at the bus stop sitting right at the border between that world and the East End, the wind had teeth. It bit through thin jackets, whistled through cracked vents, and carried the exhausted breath of working people who had nothing left to give. 12-year-old Betsy Miller, a small black girl with tightly braided hair and intelligent, watchful eyes, stood on that border. She clutched a plastic grocery bag in one hand. Inside were her mother's cleaning uniform, still faintly smelling of lemon polish and bleach, and her bus fare in the other. She kept her fingers closed tight around the coins as if letting go might make them vanish. It wasn't just bus money, it was the last of their emergency fund. Milk money, heat money, end-of-the-week survival money. Her mother, Linda, was still inside the sprawling Harrison mansion behind the gates. A place big enough to house 10 families, yet the owners didn't tolerate seeing even one member of the Helps family, especially not a black maid's daughter. Betsy wasn't supposed to ever be seen there. But Linda's back had been acting up again. Sharp spasms she tried to hide behind a smile, so Betsy had slipped in through the service entrance to scrub baseboards and dust shelves, giving her mother a few hours of relief. They worked like ghosts in that house, never breathing too loudly, never leaving a trace. Now, schoolbooks tucked under her arm, Betsy waited for the number 40 to carry her back to the East End, to their drafty apartment with the sticky front door and the heater that rattled like it was dying. But it was home. Sort of. She checked her old digital watch. The bus was due any minute. She wasn't alone. Sitting on the far end of the bench was an older white woman, elegant even through the smudges on her camel hair coat, though clearly rattled. Her hands trembled as they rested on her lap. Her hair, pinned neatly earlier, now had strands escaping into the wind. She looked like a piece of fine china placed by mistake on a concrete curb. Betsy tried not to stare, but something was off. The woman's eyes darted around like she had misplaced time itself. She patted her pockets, looked beneath the bench, checked the ground again. "Is something wrong, ma'am?" Betsy asked softly. The woman, startled. My handbag. I had it. I placed it right beside me." Her voice was refined but laced with rising panic. "My phone, my wallet, everything." Betsy looked at the empty space beside her. "Did you leave it somewhere?" I'm not sure," the woman whispered, pressing a hand to her temple. "I was admiring the gardens up the road. I must have walked too far. I just need to get back home." Before Betsy could answer, a deep diesel rumble shook the sidewalk. The number 40 came around the corner, brakes screeching like scraped metal. The door hissed open, and everything that happened next began here. The doors of the number 40 groaned open, and the driver glared down at the bus stop like the world personally offended him. His badge read Guis, and Betsy knew that face all too well. Harsh, impatient, the type who treated every passenger like they were already wasting his time. He never waited, never smiled, never cared. "Let's move," he barked, drumming thick fingers on the steering wheel. "Behind schedule." The older woman rose unsteadily, gripping the rail as though it might vanish from under her. She stepped toward the bus, trying to steady her breath. "Sir," she said, voice wavering but dignified, "I seem to have misplaced my purse. If you would be so kind as to take me to the downtown station, I can contact—" Gus laughed, a sharp, ugly sound. "No pay, no ride. You see a charity sign on this bus? He stabbed a finger toward a faded sticker above his head. Fare is $3. Cash only. The woman blinked as if physically struck. I'm not asking for a handout. I simply need transport home. Yeah? Gus snapped. Well, I need my paycheck. You got cash or not? Her shoulders sagged. The chill in the air seemed to settle into her bones. She stepped back onto the curb, eyes dimming with humiliation. People passed behind the bus, pretending not to hear, not to see. Betsy felt something burn inside her. She'd seen that look before, on her mother's face when Mrs. Harrison scolded her for moving too slow, or when they were short on rent, or when the world reminded them they didn't belong. The older woman whispered, barely audible, I apologize for delaying you. Gus reached for the lever to close the door, but Betsy stepped forward. Wait, she said, louder than she meant to. Her voice cracked, but she didn't back down. Gus rolled his eyes. Kid, if you're getting on, get on. Betsy stared at the older woman's trembling hands, then at the little bag in her own. Inside were her mother's uniform, and the last of their food money. $5, milk for dinner, heat for the night, their safety net. Her stomach twisted, but some things cost more than money. Before she could talk herself out of it, she wedged her sneaker into the door, keeping it open. Hey, Gus barked. Move your foot. Betsy didn't move. Her heart hammered, but she reached into her pocket and closed her fingers around the crumpled bills and coins. All of it. The whole $5. She walked slowly up the steps. The clang of her money hitting the fare box echoed through the silent bus. That's for both of us, she said, chin lifting. She looked the driver right in the eyes. She's riding. Gus stared between the girl, the old woman, and the money he couldn't legally refuse. He grunted, annoyed but trapped. Fine. Sit down, and don't cause trouble. Betsy turned back to the woman, extending her small hand. Come on, ma'am, she whispered. It's okay now. The older woman looked at Betsy's hand like it was something holy, something she hadn't seen in years. She took it, her grip shaking. Thank you, she breathed. Betsy guided her onto the bus as it lurched forward, the driver muttering under his breath. Neither of them knew it yet, but that single act of courage had just altered the trajectories of 2 lives, maybe 3. The bus lurched forward before either of them were fully seated, jerking the older woman against the metal pole. Betsy steadied her gently, guiding her toward a cracked vinyl seat halfway down the aisle, far from Gus's glare, far from the rowdy teenagers at the back, and close enough to the window so the woman could breathe. The older woman sat stiffly, clasping her hands in her lap as though trying to hold herself together. Betsy slid into the seat beside her, clutching her plastic grocery bag like a shield. She tried to slow her breathing, but everything inside her buzzed. The fear of spending her last $5, the relief that the woman had made it on the bus, and the sharp, gnawing dread of telling her mother what she'd done. For a few moments, neither spoke. The bus clattered through the wealthier streets, the windows reflecting houses she'd just spent hours cleaning. Houses that sparkled with polished brass and marble entryways, houses where people bought $20 candles that smelled like autumn air and boxed them up as holiday gifts. The same houses where Betsy had scrubbed baseboards until her knees bruised. The woman glanced sideways at her. You didn't have to do that, she said softly. That was your money. A child shouldn't have to sacrifice so much. Betsy shrugged, staring at her worn sneakers. It's just money. Her voice cracked. She cleared her throat. My mom says nobody gets left behind, especially not when it's getting dark. The woman's eyes softened. Your mother sounds like a wise woman. She works hard, Betsy replied, harder than anyone I know. The woman studied her carefully. At her thin jacket, at the grocery bag holding a maid's uniform, at the dog tags peeking slightly from under Betsy's shirt. Something about those tags made her tilt her head. "Is that your father's?" she asked, gently, pointing to the chain. Betsy shook her head. "My grandpa's, Sergeant William Miller. He fought in the war. Saved his whole platoon, they say." The woman inhaled sharply, her expression transforming from confusion into something piercing and shaken. She leaned closer, voice trembling. "William Miller. From the 101st?" Betsy's head whipped toward her. "You know him?" "Know him?" The woman's voice dropped to a whisper. "My late husband. He served under a Miller. A man he swore saved his life. He never forgot that name." Betsy blinked, stunned. She'd never met anyone who knew her grandfather from those stories. She didn't know what to say, so she held the dog tags, feeling their warmth against her palm. The bus hit a pothole, rattling the windows. The wealthy streets were fading behind them, replaced by the cramped yards and dimmer lights of the transition neighborhoods. The woman shivered again, the cold air from the broken heater blowing across her legs. Without hesitating, Betsy unzipped her denim jacket and draped it over the woman's knees. "Oh, my dear, you'll freeze," the woman protested. "I'm used to it," Betsy said simply. "You look colder." The woman touched the jacket, thin, worn, frayed at the cuffs, but it was warm, and offered freely. She looked at the girl beside her with something like awe and something like heartbreak. "Tell me, Betsy Miller," she said gently, "why is a 12-year-old girl riding this bus alone at night?" Betsy swallowed hard, because the truth wasn't easy, but it mattered. Betsy looked down at her hands, twisting the plastic grocery bag handle around her fingers. The truth wasn't pretty, and it wasn't gentle, but then again, nothing in her life had been gentle for a long time. "My mom's still working," she said finally. "She cleans the Harrison house up on the hill. I help her sometimes." She lowered her voice. "But they don't know. If they found out a black maid's daughter was helping inside their house, Mom could lose her job." The older woman, still shivering slightly under the denim jacket, closed her eyes, absorbing the weight of that. When she opened them again, there was no pity in her expression. There was anger, sharp, quiet anger. "What kind of people," she murmured, "depend on someone's labor but refuse to see their children?" Betsy shrugged. "People with big houses," she said simply. "Mom says we keep our heads down, do the work, and be grateful." "Grateful," the woman repeated, tasting the word like something sour. "Grateful for what, exactly?" Betsy didn't answer. She didn't have to. The broken heater blasting cold air, the cracked vinyl seats, her thin jacket now warming someone else, everything answered for her. A sudden pothole rattled the bus again. The woman winced and adjusted her posture. "My name is Eleanor," she said after a moment, extending her hand shakily. "Eleanor Caldwell." Betsy's eyes widened. She'd heard that last name somewhere. Maybe in school. Maybe on one of those shiny brochures the wealthy kids carried. "Caldwell, like the bank." Eleanor gave a small, tired smile. "Among other things, my husband built the foundation." "Wow," Betsy whispered, impressed despite herself. "So you're rich?" Eleanor chuckled softly. "My dear, I suppose that's one way to put it." The bus turned onto the East End route, streetlights flickering like tired fireflies. The farther they rode, the more out of place Eleanor looked, like a museum statue dropped into a back alley. Betsy bit her lip. "Do you know where you're going? Your house? Is it close to the station?" Eleanor hesitated. The confidence she'd shown a minute ago flickered. "I believe I can call for a car from the station," she said. "If there is a phone." Betsy stiffened. The station at night was dangerous. Even grown men avoided it. "You can't go there alone. Not dressed like that. Someone could hurt you." Eleanor's hands trembled again. I don't have a choice, child." "Yes, you do," Betsy said firmly. She pulled the cord. The bus dinged. "This is my stop. Get off with me. My mom will be home in an hour. We have a phone, and heat. Sort of. Eleanor looked stunned. Oh, I couldn't impose. You're not imposing, Betsy insisted. You're a friend now, and Millers don't leave friends behind. The bus slowed in front of a row of old brick buildings with dim hall lights and crooked mailboxes. The air outside was colder, sharper, the kind of cold that crept into your bones. Betsy stepped off first, then turned and offered her hand just like she had at the curb. Come on, Miss Eleanor, she said softly. It's safe with us. Eleanor took the hand, and for the first time all day she looked like she believed it. The stairwell of the apartment building smelled like boiled cabbage, old sneakers, and floor wax, a scent that wrapped itself around Eleanor the moment she stepped inside. Betsy moved ahead of her, lifting her chin with practiced bravery. Eleanor watched the girl climb, her braids swaying, her small hand brushing the railing as if steadying herself for the weight of responsibility she wore far too young. How many flights? Eleanor asked, breath catching slightly. Just 2 more, Betsy said. Ours is the one with the blue door. Mom says the color makes the hallway look less tired. The third-floor landing felt narrow, dim, and worn. Betsy jiggled the tricky lock, pushed the door open with her shoulder, and stepped aside proudly. Welcome to the castle, she said with a grin. Eleanor stepped inside and paused. The apartment was small, a kitchen squeezed into a corner, a couch that sagged in the middle, and a table no bigger than a nightstand. But everything was spotless. The floor gleamed. The couch cushions were patched but carefully arranged. A crocheted blanket added color to the faded armchair. Every detail whispered effort, dignity, and survival. You keep a lovely home, Eleanor said quietly. Betsy lit up. Mom says if you don't have much, you treat what you do have like treasure. Eleanor eased herself into the armchair. Her legs throbbed from the stairs. The cold from outside had sunk into her bones, but the warmth, emotional warmth, inside this tiny apartment was unlike anything she felt in years. Betsy hurried to the kitchenette, filling the kettle with water. Do you like chamomile? The girl asked. It's all we got. Chamomile is perfect, Eleanor said. She let her gaze trace the room. Coupons covered the fridge door. A stack of bills sat neatly on the little table, organized but heavy with worry. She saw the taped-up reading glasses, the threadbare dish towels, and the single flickering ceiling bulb. Poverty didn't hide itself. It left fingerprints on everything. Before Eleanor could speak again, the door latch jiggled. Betsy's eyes widened. Mom's home, she said. The door swung open and Linda stumbled inside. Her uniform hung crooked, her hair was frizzy from a long shift, and she clutched her lower back as if her spine were a cracked pane of glass. Baby, grab me the ice pack, she groaned. She froze. Her tired eyes landed directly on Eleanor, sitting primly in their floral armchair with Betsy's jacket across her lap. For a heartbeat, silence. Then panic. Betsy, Linda gasped, limping forward. What did I tell you about strangers? Who is this? Mom, it's okay. Betsy rushed to her side, taking her heavy bag. This is Miss Eleanor. She lost her purse and Gus wouldn't let her on the bus, so I paid. She knows Grandpa's regiment. Linda blinked at Eleanor. Recognition dawning slowly. Not of the name Caldwell, but of class, posture, breeding. Eleanor stood, steadying herself. Mrs. Miller, she said gently, your daughter saved me tonight. Linda's anger faltered, replaced by exhaustion and something softer. Pride, fear, gratitude, all tangled together. I'm Linda, she said, adjusting her voice. I'm sorry about the mess. We weren't expecting, well, anyone. It's immaculate, Eleanor said, and warm. A weak laugh escaped Linda. It's not warm, ma'am. The heater's been busted since Tuesday. Eleanor's face tightened. This was more than a temporary hardship. This was a pattern of survival carved into a life. and she had seen enough. Morning crept into the apartment like a hesitant visitor. Thin, gray light filtering through the sheer curtains and settling over the room in a muted hush. Eleanor opened her eyes slowly. The sofa beneath her was lumpy, the blanket scratchy against her cheek. Yet she hadn't slept this deeply in years. No soft chime of security alarms, no hum of temperature-controlled vents, just the real, raw sounds of a city waking up. A kettle whistled weakly from the tiny kitchen. Linda stood by the counter, one hand braced against the edge, her face pale with pain. Betsy, dressed in her school clothes, sliced the last heel of bread into precise squares, as though cutting it smaller made it more filling. "Mom, you gotta eat," Betsy whispered, nudging the plate toward her. "You'll get dizzy again." Linda shook her head. "My stomach. Can't. Not today. I need to get to the bus early." Eleanor sat up, her joints aching but her mind sharp. She walked toward them with deliberate steps. "You are not going to work today," she said calmly. Linda blinked at her as if she'd spoken in another language. "I have to. Mrs. Harrison will fire me if I'm late, if I lose that job." "You can't stand upright without wincing," Eleanor interrupted gently. "You need a doctor, rest, and protection, not another shift cleaning floors for people who treat you like furniture." Linda clutched her tote bag. "You don't understand, Miss Eleanor. In my world, if you don't work, you don't eat. That's the rule." "And in my world," Eleanor said, lifting her chin, "I decide the rules." Before Linda could respond, Eleanor reached for the rotary phone on the wall. Her fingers moved with old confidence, dialing a number she had known for decades. She didn't call a taxi or a friend. She called her estate. It rang once, twice. Then a frantic man answered, voice trembling. "Ma'am, is that... Where are you? We've been searching..." "Robert," Eleanor said with the calm authority of a queen returning to her throne. "Bring the car, the Commodore, and come to 402 Elm Street, apartment 3B. There was frantic scrambling, muffled voices. "Do we notify the police? The board? Your son?" "No," Eleanor said firmly. "Just the car, and bring the boys. I have guests." She hung up the phone with a decisive click. Linda stared at her, terrified. "Miss Eleanor, what did you do?" "I called home," Eleanor said simply, "and I'm asking you to trust me for 20 minutes." Linda hesitated, then nodded weakly. 20 minutes. Not a second more. They waited. Minutes stretched like taut string. Betsy sat by the window, peeking through the curtains, her breath fogging the glass. Linda paced, her hand pressed to her lower back, whispering prayers under her breath. Then the building began to hum. A deep, powerful engine purr rolled down the street. Nothing like the sputter of city buses or old sedans. Betsy gasped. "Mom, come here. Hurry." Linda stepped to the window. Her jaw dropped. Turning onto their potholed road was a full black convoy. 3 SUVs surrounding a gleaming limousine with diplomatic flags on the fenders. Neighbors spilled onto balconies. People pointed, whispered, stared. In this neighborhood, cars like that meant only 2 things: trouble or power. Linda stumbled backward. "Oh, Lord! Miss Eleanor, who exactly are you?" Eleanor rose from the armchair with a steadiness that erased every trace of confusion she'd shown the day before. "I'm someone," she said quietly, "who never forgets a debt." And then came the knock. 3 crisp, respectful taps that changed everything.